Alright, the first thing I'd like to do is just get the lay of the land. Here we have the main server, the current server that is hosting Enterprise PDM. We have the database installed on the same server as the archive server, and you can see here inside the SQL server we have this Acme EPDM and we have the Kinesia master database. These are the databases we're going to need to back up because we're moving SQL to a new server as well. Just to be clear, if you're leaving SQL, if the database is staying on the single server, a separate server, you don't need to go through the processes of doing the backups and restores of the database processes. I'll try to differentiate between the processes, whether you need to do one versus the other. But just to give the lay of the land, first of all, we've got a full install, like I said, of EPDM here. Here's the archive server configuration utility. There's the vault. There's where the vault's located. There's the SQL database and so on that it's connected with and so on. One more thing I just want to point out, the vault storage, where that's located is on the C drive on the server. Under this EPDM vaults, you can see here the Acme EPDM vault and all the subfolders with all the instances and versions and so on stored in it. We're going to need to move this entire folder over to the new server, which will be acting as the archive server. Some other things we'll be pointing out along the way, but that's a couple of the key points I wanted to make. To begin with, once again, we need to get some backups. Now this copy process of the files is probably what's going to take the longest. So we could get started on that in the new server, but I have not installed the new server yet, and I'll do that first on the new server, installing Enterprise PDM. What I tend to like to do is install all the server components, archive and database server, and install a client on that machine so that I can have these utilities, particularly the admin tool, so I can work with the vault on the server itself. And I can see a vault view to do any troubleshooting. I can go ahead and add a local view to the server, as you might have noticed there, the blueberry, and I can log in there as admin if I need to do some any troubleshooting and see if I can connect, see if I can find some files and so on. So it's something that I'm going to do on the new server as well. Okay, just to outline, part of the migration process in this case will be to also get upgraded to 2013 Service Pack 4. Just a quick reminder, how can you check to see what version you currently have installed? Is going to the admin tool, clicking on the About icon. You'll see right now we have 2012 Service Pack 5. So I'm going to go ahead and go through the process of the upgrade. There's a YouTube video outlining some of that. Again, an emphasized reminder. Please make sure you get the updated license file for 2013 before you go ahead and start the upgrades. Make sure you have that file. Now that we have the server rebooted, we want to go ahead and check, make sure everything's upgraded. So we can take a look at the admin tool once again. First thing we'll look at is the About icon once again, and see that it is upgraded to 13.4, Service Pack 4. Then we'll go ahead and log into the vault. Make sure you update your license file. Once again, to do that, you can double click on license, browse for the new license file wherever you have that located. Once it's read in and you click OK, you should then double click on it again and see that it's got the proper license count for you. Once that's done, one final step we'll take a look at. In this case, we'll go ahead and just check to make sure we upgrade the add-ins. In this case, particularly the task add-ins. These are the tasks like convert and so on. Creating PDFs is very common. So we want to make sure that's up to date. Now, you want to check perhaps what version you've got loaded, but if you're upgrading from a previous version, like from 2012 to 2013 in this case, it's probably beneficial to go ahead and upload that and open that up. So what I'll do is go to File, Open, browse to the install directory in Program Files, SolidWorks Enterprise PDM, wherever it's installed. Go into the default data folder, and at the bottom of this list, there will be a convert _GB for English. So I'll double click on that. Here you can see the task add-in. We'll just drag and drop that over to the add-ins. And you'll see here it'll say it already contains one. Do you want to replace this object? I'll say yes. And that should have gotten it up to date. In this case, we can see the new dates and so forth on it. And we now know that that's most current. Okay, so just to get an assessment of where we are again, we've got the original server where it houses the archive server, and it's also running SQL, the database backend. I've done the upgrade of EPDM and updated that to 2013 Service Pack 4. I've also upgraded the database itself inside SQL to 2013, I'm sorry. So we're actually ready to begin the migration to the new server. On the new server, just to let you know what I've done here, of course, SQL's been installed, SQL Server, and EPDM 2013 Service Pack 4 has been installed on the new server. Nothing else has been done. There's no vaults currently in this server. There's no local vault views of any kind. It's just installed with the server components and a client. That's all that's been done so far. So now we'll begin that process of migrating over to the new server. The process entails a couple of steps. One that would take the longest perhaps is actually moving the archive folder, as I mentioned before, inside this current server. In the EPDM Vaults folder, where I've identified the root folder, is the Vault archives. So we can start that process of copying the files over to the new server where there are no vaults at all. You'll see here inside this structure, if I look inside, I've identified the root folder to be the same, which could be helpful. I'll explain why in a little bit. But here I can see I've got all of these, the Vault root folder, which has nothing in it whatsoever. So if you want to begin the process now of copying all those over, that again would probably be taking the longest in this migration, you can begin the process now. You can go ahead and map to a share on that old server and start copying that over. In this case, I'm going to go ahead and on this old server, I'm going to copy the vault to a share on another server that I've got. So I'm going to copy that entire directory over to this share over here and get that process going. This vault's not very big, obviously not very many files, not a lot of versions, so actually this won't take very long. But I think you'll get the point here. Going to the new server, I'll go to that same share, copy that vault directory there over to the EPDM vaults here. Again, you can probably do this as a direct copy from a share or from a mapping. So once that's done, that step is probably going to take the longest. While it's copying, we can go ahead and proceed with a few more steps. So let's pretend that that's still going to copy for another couple of hours perhaps. Okay, so I'll go back to the current server, WS081, and we'll go ahead and do the process of backing up a few things. First of all, we'll need to back up the database. So I'll log in to the database itself using the console. Okay, so once I'm logged into the database, there's in this case two databases that need to be backed up, as I mentioned before, the actual Vault, Acme EPDM, and the Kinecio database. So we'll just go ahead and right click on these, go to our tasks, and perform a backup. Once again, it's important that you understand where that's being backed up. So just really quickly, again, I want to reiterate, this path here is where we need to go get that BAK file. So if you wanted to browse to that first, that's fine. We can go ahead and open up the computer. Here I've got a few folders, so it's important to understand which one we're talking about here. Sorry. I'll go ahead and go into the MS11 server, and inside here under backups here is where we now have both those files. So both of these files will need to be sent over. So once again, I'll put them over into, just make sure it's got the BAK extension on it. Okay, I'll send these over to that share directory, once again copying these over to the share. Okay, now there's one more backup process we need to perform here, and that's going to be using the configuration utility for the archive server. Open that up, go to the tools, backup settings, and back up the vaults here, all the vaults here. Again, the backup location is going to be here. We don't need any password, and in fact it does show there's asterisks in here indicating that there might be one, but there isn't. If you want to be sure, just go ahead and delete and clear them out, that's fine. Then you can go ahead and launch the backup. And it says, are you sure you don't want to use a password? Just say yes. And we'll go ahead and say yes, and the backup is successfully made. So we'll go ahead and browse to that location. Just copy that path. Click OK on that. Just cancel that at this point. Go to the browser, and I'll just paste the path in there. It should take us to that folder, and this backup DAT file is what we need to copy and get restored over on the new server. So once again, I'll put this over here in the share. And remember, all this while, all these files from the vault might still be copying, and that's okay, because that might take a while depending on the size of your vault. But these are the backup files we're going to need to restore on the new server. The databases themselves and the backup.dat file for the archive server. Just as a footnote, if all you're moving is the archive server itself, then we wouldn't need to back up any of the database information at all. Just take the backup of the archive server, and then we'll restore that on the new archive server location. If all you're doing is moving the database, you don't need to back up the archive server. Just back up the databases themselves and restore it to the new database server. A couple of key points there. So we've got our backed up information, and now we can switch back over to the other server, the new server. And once again, we've got the copy done here, but that might still be going on. What we want to do is start to restore a few things. The first thing I'll do is restore the databases. So let me go ahead and log into SQL on this machine. Once I'm logged into the SQL server on this machine, server -2, I'm going to go ahead and restore those databases. To restore the databases, we'll need those databases to be local. So let me go ahead and copy those from that temp directory. And if you like, you can bring over the back file as well. Just copy those and put those over here temporarily on the C drive. Okay, back in the SQL database, we can go ahead and right-click the database, restore the database, and in this case, we'll do it from the device, the file. Browse for that, and now that it's local, again, you can see here we can't see any shares inside the restore, but we should be able to click on the C drive and see those database backups. I'll start with Kinecio first. Click OK, click OK. And there we see it's going to restore that. I'll go ahead and restore that to the MasterDB database name and all that, just like the old server. Click OK to finish. That should just take a second. Very good. So that's been restored, and we'll do the same to the other one. Now that the databases have been restored, there is one thing we'll need to do inside the actual Vault database. There's a table, two tables, that we'll need to modify. Right here at the top is Archive Servers, so we'll right-click on that and choose the Edit option, Edit Top 200 Rows. As you can see here, the Archive Server has the old name. Perhaps we'll need to change that. WS08-2 is the new server, the new archive server. So we change and update that table. Also system info down here towards the bottom will have to be updated. So we'll edit top 200 rows there. And as you can see here, once again, the same thing. We'll need to change that WS08-2 under archive server name. And for the purposes of making sure everything is indexed properly, we can go ahead and run a small script. It's just a simple command, really. And to do that, we can go ahead and right-click on the Acme Vault, select New Query, and I'll just type it in here. EXEC, this is in the installation guide, once again, page 130, SYS underscore, and we should get some IntelliSense to come up here in just a second. Or not. There it is, right at the end. And we'll go ahead and execute that. Should take a moment and say it's completed successfully. Don't need to save it. So once that's done, we essentially have all the database migration completed. Now we can turn our attention to the archive server itself, and that's going to involve this backup.dat file that we got from the other server. We'll start up the archive server configuration utility here. Once again, as you can see, there is no vault yet loaded here. So what I'll do is go ahead and do the tools, backup settings on the new server, and I'll use the load backup and browse for that file. Once again, it should be on C drive. The backup.dat. Go ahead and open that. There is no password, so we can go ahead and hit OK. And it should load the backup succeeded. Once that's done, we're still not finished. Let me go ahead and cancel. Now that we're finished loading that up, now we need to do some registry edits. Once again, this is inside the migration tool. The installation guide. It starts at the top of page 131. You should be able to find this information there. Once that's finished, we're going to go ahead and do the Regedit. And here we want to look for local machines, software, SolidWorks. Inside there, we're going to go under Applications. You'll see PDM Enterprise, expanding that. You'll see the archive server. Here you can see the basic information that shouldn't be modified. No need to modify that. But a couple of places we need to look at is under the computers, local, and under archives. We want to make sure that this is still pointing to the proper root directory. Again, the advantage that I mentioned earlier of having the same vault folder name and location. In this case, we don't have to modify this, but again, if you're moving it to a new server with a different drive storage, you'll have to modify this to that proper root directory. After loading the backup from the other server, it will have probably modified that. Another place we need to look at, under the vaults, Acme EPDM, we need to make sure we change a couple of things. The server now is not WS081, it's 2, so I'll change that to the new server name. And the big one here, archive tables. Once again, I've kind of made it easy on myself, being the same drive and directory names, and of course it's going to be the same vault name. But it may be likely, again, that you put your root folder in another location on this new server, so you'll have to edit each one of these to change that folder to point to the right root directory, whether that on D or F or whatever the data drive is. Wherever you might have loaded the root of the archive folders, you'll need to add that and update that here. I've spoiled myself and made it real simple, so it's all still the same. But when you load the data from the other archive server, it will have modified and updated all these table IDs here to be pointing to where it was in the old server. So once again, very possible you might need to change these settings, these keys, to indicate where the root folder is on this server. Once that's been all completed, that migration to the new server should be pretty well complete now that we've got that finished. There will be, of course, a need on each one of the clients to update their local vault views to point to the new server, be that for the database server or archive server. So in a sense, right now what we can do is restart some of the services. What I'll do is go ahead and restart the archive server service, and I'll go ahead and get into the admin tool. And if I refresh this server now, it should show me the Acme EPDM vault. If I log in, I should be able to log in with the login password. And if I wanted to, I can go ahead now at this point to create the local view, and I'll just put that on C. And access by all users, yes. And it's asking me to log in, so I'll log in as admin. Now you should be doing this, of course, once all the files from the vault have been migrated over. Let that process finish. Okay. And I'll log into the Acme local vault view. And here we can see a fully migrated vault. And if I was to just go ahead and double click into a project where I know some files are located, I can see the data card here, I can see the files. I can see here under version tab, if I do a get latest on that file, I should be able to see that it's migrated to all servers. Notice the get latest worked. So knowing that I'm actually connecting to the WS082, it's able to retrieve the files. That process is now complete. It's just a matter of installing all the clients and getting them upgraded to 2013.